with that being said, welcome to DPO Flow. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you for spending this time with us. We really appreciate it. Just quickly, if you don't know me, if you haven't been to any of my classes before, I'm Caroline. I'm a certified photo organizer. I'm also a Golden Circle member of NAPO and an advisory board member to the photo managers. And what I do is I teach photo organizing, systems and operations, digital asset management, productivity, and project management. And as you may have heard, I was born and raised in Sweden, where I am today. So I am known as the Swedish organizer by my clients, and that's also what my company is called. If you haven't visited my photo blog, my photo organizing blog, that's at organizingphotos.net. We have a ton of resources there, so feel free to stop over there and check those out when this is over. For those of you who are business owners, we also have the swedishorganizer.com, and that's where I talk more about systems and operations, productivity, and that sort of thing. So 2 websites, feel free to pick the one you like and visit me over there. And then, of course, with me is Amy, also a certified photo organizer. And for those of you who are in my programs and courses, you'll recognize her. So she's organizing and productivity coach with my company, and she has been with me since 2019, and I don't know what I would do without her. So I just mentioned that she's been moving currently. She's been in Braga, Portugal for some time now, but she's going into the Netherlands. So that's another exciting adventure for her. We also have with us Dragana, phenomenal actress from Skopje, Macedonia. Today, she's going to be manning the chat and having a peek at your questions, doing attendance, and some live event support for us. So thank you to both my team members for being here. I really appreciate your help as usual. And yeah, this is one of those workshops that we always look forward to. We do DPO Flow once a year. And the reason we do that is because technology just changes so fast and we have to stay updated. So we're going to jump straight into this. And I'm going to start right at the beginning for anybody who's new or who doesn't know a lot about photo organizing. The biggest mistake that we see that people make when they're trying to get organized is that they forget about consolidation, right? So what they'll do is they'll go to Google and they'll say, what is the best photo organizing program? And then they'll get like a bajillion answers, and then they'll get stuck and they'll go, I don't know which program to choose. That's actually not necessarily the thing to focus on in the beginning stages, right? What we need to do is consolidate. So as photo organizers, what we do is we help people consolidate first. And usually if I talk to a new client, I'll ask them, well, where are your photos? What do you have? And then this is the list that I get. I get a ton of places that they're talking about. They'll say something like, well, I have 2 or 3 iPhones and all of them have separate iCloud accounts. I have some older phones with photos on them and I'm not sure how to get those off of there. Then I have those external hard drives. I put old backups on there. I have a bunch of flash drives and I think I transferred all of the files, but I'm not sure if I did. I kind of lost count. My friends and family send me emails, maybe even some texts with photos in there. So those are there. And then I have this Dropbox account or this cloud account or that cloud account. And also went to Disneyland and I have a bunch of CDs and DVDs from there. And then I have that old computer that I don't know if I moved the library off of. So I've kept it because what if, but I don't know if I have the cord anymore. And then I imported some files into a software, but I can't remember which software it was because I'm not familiar with it. And then I have this giant backlog of scanned, photos that need to be scanned that I inherited from my parents. So it's usually this just giant list of very overwhelming feelings that come up, right? Where everybody's telling me that they have so many different places that their photos are, and that's why they feel scattered. And so what I want you to recognize here is that you can't organize what you can't access. So what we need to do is we need to consolidate first, and then we organize second, okay? So we need to make your photos conveniently accessible, and that means that we consolidate them onto what we call a DPH, a digital photo hub, so that you know where they are, right? So that you can tangibly say, this is where my photos live. Then we can organize them because the organization is really a way of finding what you need faster, right? But it's not going to go very fast if it's scattered in all of these places. It's just going to be too hard. So where are your photos? If I ask you that, Is the answer clear enough, right? If the answer is not clear enough, then you need to start consolidating, right? And how do we start consolidating? Well, we need a plan. Because with so many different places and so many different things to keep track of, we need to plan this out before we start moving files around, or you're just going to have to start over at some point. And the way we do that is we draw out what we call a DPO flow so that we understand how our ecosystem looks and functions before we start moving files around. So when I talk about DPO flow, DPO stands for digital photo organizing. That's what we in the industry just call it, DPO. It's just faster to say, okay? Flow stands for workflow. It's how your photos flow between the devices and services that you use in your digital universe, right? That's what I call the workflow that we create together. And what it essentially is a blueprint for how things work. This is actually the first step that we teach our students. We have a course called DPO Pro, the Ultimate Photo Organizing Masterclass. And step one is always going to be inventory, basically, and consolidation. And for you to understand exactly where your photos are stored, how your digital ecosystem setup works, and then how your photos move between tools and devices in your digital universe, because we find that a lot of people just are not quite sure where their photos live, or even how the cloud functions, or where anything is stored in its original version. So when you understand your DPO flow, it helps you visualize how your system works. It also lays the foundation for all of your organization, because you'll understand what tools you need to use in order to find what you need. And then it lets you replace any tools or devices in your workflow at any given time with minimal disruption to your digital life, because you know what you're taking away and you know what you're putting in again. All right. So what I want to show you here is a graphic. And again, you'll have this as a handout in the Academy, so you can take a look at it there. If you look at the cluster on the left there, that is basically representing all the different types of media and all the different types of places where your photos might originate from. Okay, so if you think about, you may have a phone, you may have reels with film or video, you may have floppy disks still, you may have CDs or cloud storage, whatever it might be. All of that stuff on the left, those are your inputs, okay? And then in the middle, we have your DPH, your Digital Photo Hub. That's where your photos live, okay? And we need to decide what that is. And the reason we want to make sure everything gets consolidated on there is because then that is what we can now back up. Because think about it, if you have photos scattered in so many different places, you can't keep them safe. You can't really back them up in a coherent way, because it's just too many different things to keep track of, right? So when we take all of those things, we consolidate, we import into a digital photo hub, we can now back that up. Even if it's a complete and total mess, it still can keep your photos safe, at least until we can organize them and make it look prettier, right? But at least your photos will be safe and you won't lose them, right? So if you look on the bottom, we also have a backup A, a backup B, and a backup C. And we usually recommend the 3-2-1 rule for that, for backups, meaning that you have 3 versions in at least 2 different types of media, and one of them is offsite. Okay, so we're gonna, give some recommendations on that when we look at the workflows, but keep in mind that you want to have at least your main archive, your main photo hub, and then you want to have at least 2 different backups of that, so that you can adhere to that 3-2-1 rule. That's just the best practice. And then from that digital photo hub, what we do is we export photos, meaning we create copies and move copies out if we want to share them or create projects, because we want your digital photo hub to be intact. And if you actually start moving copies out of it, then you need to start re-importing them again. And that just creates this loop that we don't necessarily need. So when it's time to create a photo book or some other gift or something like that, then we go into our digital photo hub, we choose the photos that we want to work with, create copies of those, and move those copies out. And then when the project is over, we can actually just delete those, and our digital photo hub is still intact. Okay, so that is the basic core sort of framework of this blueprint that you're going to be drawing out with us. A A good DPO flow means that your photos also have a clear, ideally automatic way of getting to that digital photo hub so that you can keep them safe, organized, and consistently backed up. It's a lot easier for this to be automatic so that you don't have to think about it. Can you do it manually? Absolutely. And we're going to take a look at a workflow or two where it is more manual. But you want to think about, how can I make this easy on myself? How can I make sure that I have to do the least amount of work as possible and still, stay organized? And like I said, whatever devices and services that you use, it doesn't matter as much. I think I say in another class that I teach that it's kind of like picking your brand of car. As long as you know how to drive, then you'll be fine, right? It doesn't really matter what car you're driving. And it's kind of the same thing here. Consolidation is the big thing that we focus on. And then getting it organized, you can use different tools and services and all of that. And that has a lot to do with personal preferences and the system and operating systems that you use, and your preferences of how photo programs treat your photos and all of that. We can figure that out, but consolidation is always going to be the main thing. Understanding your photo ecosystem is the most underrated part of photo management. It's easily, though, the most impactful. We find that once people start to get clear on how their ecosystem works, once they start to understand where to consolidate their photos, a ton of problems sort of solve themselves. And then they'll figure out eventually how to find things faster. So yes, organization is important, but consolidation is absolutely the first step. And we want you to design this ecosystem for yourself. And be clear on how it works so that you're in control, right? It shouldn't be something that kind of just happens. So you'll also have another handout that kind of goes along with this handout. It's the same idea, so that you can print that out and draw out your own DPO flow, okay? And if you want a second a second set of eyes on it, feel free to email it to us. We'll take a look at it and give you some pointers. But if you are clear on this, then you're going to solve a whole lot of problems in your photo world. So with that being said, let me just pause really quickly and let me see if there's any sort of core question that I need to address before we move into the workflows. Let's see here. Thank you, Hazel. Yes, we love the no panic policy too. It's so helpful. Let's see here. Okay, so I see that we have one or two questions, but we'll put a pin in those, and let's go through some of the workflows, and then we'll put all of those at the end so we can kind of look at some examples as well. So Amy, I think I'll jump into Whimsical and start with number one. Let's do that. And you can tell me if it's big enough or if I need to share a bigger size. Do I need to zoom in on this one, or what do you think? No? Okay. Let me just grab a sip of water here. Okay, so keeping in mind the DPO sort of flow framework, what that little drawing that I just showed you, we're going to now take a look at 10, 11 different workflows for the most common photo services, for the most common solutions that we have on the market, and we're going to talk through some of them and how they work, right? And the reason we start with this one is because it's the very basic one that we can think of. So some of you might go, I don't like the cloud. I don't understand syncing. I want just something very clean and simple. I don't even want to use a photo program. If that's your preference, that can be done, okay? It's not how a lot of people choose to do it, but it can certainly be done. So this might be ideal for you if you like to do things manually, if you perhaps have been used to doing file folders on your computer or in your life throughout. This might feel good for you if you just want to sort of keep your photos organized in folders, basic folders in your operating system. Then what we have here is an example of an input. And even if you added more inputs, it would still be the same thing. What you would do is really manually import them to your computer, maybe with a cord or with some sort of airdrop feature, or however you wanted to do it. Most people just kind of plug in a cord to the computer and transfer it that way. So that would be like the very basic thing that you could do. And your digital photo hub might then be your computer. It could be a PC or a Mac, it wouldn't matter, but you would have a folder structure, perhaps in your C drive under your pictures menu, right? Where you would keep all of your photos in folders. And then what you would do is you would add on a backup of that machine. You could do a time machine, which is a program that comes with your Mac computer if you have a Mac, or you could use something like Paragon's backup and recovery. Actually, Amy, I think I forgot to put the link for Paragon in there. So could you pull that one up for me? That'd be amazing. Thank you. So we have that logged. So there are plenty of backup problems on the market, programs on the market, but these are the two that we really, really like, Time Machine and Paragon, because they just do such a good job and they're so easy to use. Okay, so those are the two that we recommend, but there are plenty others that you could use out there. You could also just do a simple manual backup, meaning just copy and paste photos onto like an external hard drive, for example. That could be another way that you could back this up without even touching another program. So if we then think about the 3-2-1 rule, this here, the photo hub, would be the first copy. And then this would be a second copy if you wanted to add on the third copy and be really safe and have something off-site. You could add a cloud, or you could just do another version, right? Off-site could also refer to this being, on a different media, and perhaps you store it somewhere away. A good example actually is when I'm here in Sweden. I actually have a hard drive here that has a copy of my photo archive, and I update that when I'm here every single year. But my main archive is on my computer in Chicago. So this is a way for me to actually have a manual backup that's just very simple and basic, but it's off-site because it's not in my actual house, if that makes sense. The idea behind it is really to make sure that all of your eggs is not in the same basket, right? That if something happens to one thing, you can back it up in a different way or recover it from different sources. Then if we look at outputs, those are all the fun things that you want to do with your photos. So we could do prints, for example. We could do photo books from, let's say, Shutterfly, Forever, or some sort of similar service like that you might enjoy. Even something like Walgreens or CVS in the US, or whatever convenience store you have might be able to do that for you. But that would be a very basic workflow, right? So if you're interested in just having the minimum setup going and just having your inputs, a basic place where you store your photos, and then doing some fun things with them, you can totally do that as long as you have some sort of backup system. So the pro really is that this is as simple as it can get. There's no extras here. It's completely basic. It's very simple to remember how it's set up, and it's the least amount of tech we can get to. The con of something like this is that it's very manual. So unless you add on a photo organizing software, it's going to be harder to organize your photos quickly, right? Some of the things that we use in professional photo organizing, like keywords, facial recognition, importing, those things are not going to be available to you. So it's going to be a very manual process to sit down and actually move photos one by one into folders. Can you do it? Absolutely. But it is a little bit faster if you add on a photo program. And two that I have recommended for a simple workflow to add is Photo Mechanic as well as Adobe Bridge. Those are both very, very good programs. They can do a lot, but they are file browsers, meaning that they don't import and export your photos. You basically just buy the program and then they look at your photos where they are currently stored. It's not like they import your photos and do a bunch of stuff with them and sync them to all different places. They're just very basic. It's like a program that opens your file where it's at. And then when you close the program, the file is still where it was at. So they're very simple to add on. And you can look at your photos no matter where they're stored, and it's easy to use. So that is a simple workflow that is based on basic folders, right? No syncing, no cloud, nothing like that. Very easy. Any questions on that one before I move on? I won't stop my screen, but AB or Dragana, if you guys can look in the chat and see if there's anything pertaining to a basic workflow like this that we need to address.
Yeah, Liz asked, wouldn't that system create a lot of duplicates?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends, right? I think the thing with manual workflows like this is that you just have to be diligent about where you left off. So I think what happens a lot of the time is that, maybe this import, you do one import, let's say in July, and then you do one import in August and then one in September, but maybe you didn't delete all of the photos off your phone first, the ones that you had already imported, and then you're going to create duplicates and bring more duplicates in. So there's different ways where you can address that. You could run a deduplication software every now and then and kind of get rid of some of that if you prefer to sort of just copy and paste. Another way, like I said, is to, import and then delete the photos from the source, the original source, right? So that you kind of start over from scratch on your phone or on your camera, or whatever you're using. One thing I do recommend for people who use manual sort of folder systems is that they date them chronologically, because then you have a very clear overview about where you left off, right? So if you have your last, let's say your last folder says, 2023-0805, then you know that today's the last day I copied photos over. And then when you come back next time, you kind of go, oh yeah, I need to start on the 6th, right? That's where I left off. So as long as you have some guidelines in place about how you're doing that, you'll be fine. But there's definitely the possibility to create duplicates for sure. Anything else on this one before we move on? No, I'll move on to the next one. So the next one we decided to talk about is OneDrive. OneDrive is part of the Microsoft suite, and it's very popular for those who use PCs, or for everybody who's been, PC users maybe at work, and then they kind of take that home with them as well. It's a little bit trickier because OneDrive is a cloud drive. And so we got syncing going on here. And what syncing really means is that it's a two-way street between your devices and your computer and the cloud. So if you delete something somewhere, it deletes in all the places. And so you just want to make sure that you're mindful of how you're treating your photos when you're syncing and moving things between devices. And you want to definitely make sure that you know how it works and where your photos live, right? So that you don't make mistakes here. That being said, it's also super convenient, right? Because we talk now about having this automatic way of getting your photos from your phone, like to your computer, without you really having to do much. So if we basically take a look at how this would work here, let's say you have a phone and you have the OneDrive app on your phone. What you can do then is sync that phone to the OneDrive cloud, so that if you logged in at onedrive.com or whatever their URL is, you could then see all those photos there too. Now, if you deleted something here, that would also delete off of here in most cases, right? And if you deleted something off of here, it might delete off of here. So that's kind of how syncing works. It's meant to balance the information in the files that you see so that it looks the same everywhere. What you could then do is hook your computer up to that same account, and that way your PC would now sync with the cloud. So everything that is on your phone now also comes all the way down to your computer. They have a OneDrive app. I can't remember exactly what it's called, OneDrive Desktop or something like that, that you can use to set that up. And it's fairly simple to use. We tested it, me and Amy, and it was a little bit tricky to get it to work with programs. Not that you can't do it. You can. It's just a little bit tricky to find where that app stores the photos. But as long as you know where that is, then you'll be fine. You can find it. So what we've recommended here is that if you want to organize your photos, you could add something like Photo Mechanic, Microsoft Photos, or Forever Historian onto that computer in order to then organize faster. You could still do basic folder structures and all of that, and basically use this as a transportation method to get your photos to your computer. You could move them out from the OneDrive app if you wanted to and store them elsewhere on your computer, or you could simply leave them in there as well. But in order to add keywords and facial recognition and things like that, you would have to add on a different program. Of course, you would want to keep this backed up. And a lot of people will ask, well, isn't a cloud a backup? And that's kind of a tricky thing to answer, because sometimes it's yes and sometimes it's no, right? In a syncing scenario like this, we can't count it as a full, like, complete backup, because it's really part of the system. And like I said, if you delete something somewhere, then it deletes everywhere. So we can't really count it as a separate backup. It is true that you can add on another device. Let's say if you lost your phone, you could then hook another phone up to your OneDrive cloud, and you could still see those photos. Those photos wouldn't be anywhere. They would still be there. However, let's say that somebody stole your phone and started deleting photos off of it, then those photos would go away, right? So it's not a complete backup in that sense that we normally talk about it. It's more of a, what should we call it? Like a safeguard kind of a way of thinking about losing your devices and things like that. What we want to do is we want to have a separate full computer backup elsewhere also that we can pull from, that even if something changes here, we could still recover those changes for at least a little bit of time. And one service that we really recommend in my company is Backblaze, backblaze.com. And it's fairly simple and easy to sign up for it. You basically sign up, I think it's $50-$60 a year or so. It downloads the little client on your computer, and then it backs up your entire computer. And you can even back up external hard drives that you attach to that computer, which makes it really handy, because then let's say if you stored your photos elsewhere, like off your computer, let's say if you didn't have enough space, or if you had another drive like here where we have a manual backup example, you could then actually also include that as well in the Backblaze backup. And that way you would create this very nice loop of backups where you have the first copy here, you have the second copy here, and then we have that third backup that actually grabs both of these and backs that up to Backblaze. That would be a really sort of nice scenario to make sure you adhere to the 3-2-1 rule, and then kind of make sure that you have everything safe and guarded. And from Backblaze, for example, you can download files if you need them immediately. You can also have them send stuff to you if it's a bigger backup. So there's ways to get things done if you need to recover something. But that being said, we always like to have at least one local backup that's with you, so that you don't have to rely on somebody else to provide you with a backup. Like, it's always better if I have a backup of my own stuff. And then that way, if something happens, I can recover it myself instead of going to this third party, right? So I like the mixture of sort of having both, maybe one manual that's local, that I'm in charge of, and then maybe one that's automatic that somebody else is in charge of, so that, I don't have to remember everything perfectly all the time, but I'm also not always reliant on everybody else to do the work for me. So that's a kind of a nice scenario and a nice setup to have there. And I want to clarify too that when I say Plus, Photo Mechanic, Microsoft Photos, and Forever Historian, I don't mean that you would have all three. I mean that these are three different suggestions that you could choose from that would make a sort of a nice complement to OneDrive. If you were to choose something like Forever Historian, for example, then you have a really nice sort of seamless export or, sync up into Forever. If you like Forever, Forever is a very good cloud archive that you can sign up for. It's not the cheapest one out there, but they do a great job of safekeeping your photos. And it's very popular with a lot of our customers, right? For that very reason. And they have an actual software that you can use, Forever Historian, that's PC only at this point, as far as I know. But it comes from the scrapbooking world, and they have a lot of cool features that you can do with it. So if you're into that, then that might be a nice thing to add on, because you could then have that sort of seamless transition into creating projects, into creating your archive and all of that, right? It would be a really nice way to do that. So the only thing with OneDrive, like I mentioned, if you are going to use that, then it is very basic organizational functionality. So what we tend to do is use OneDrive mostly as a transportation system in order to get the photos to the computer. And then we use some other type of program to organize them there. Organizing in OneDrive is a very labor-intensive project. Can you do it? Of course. But it is fairly basic in terms of the features that they offer, right? And Amy and I just tested this the other day. And one thing that we did like is that they do embed IPTC metadata into the photos via the app as well as via the cloud. And so whatever information you put in there is in there. And that is something that not a lot of cloud services do well. So that is definitely a pro that I, that I have to give to them. Like that's a very good thing that they have going on there.